We all know that Sprunki is a unique game with singing characters who are thrown into a terrifying world, with every new mod getting scarier than the last. But what if we could save all the Sprunki? Would they all live? What would they look like? Let's see in a version of the game where everyone survives. We see a typical scene with a soundtrack, but even here, for some reason, all the characters seem afraid of something. Let's examine each character to see what happened to them. Beginning with Oren, he was a good-hearted and happy character who had no enemies or people who wanted to hurt him. However, as we know from the horror version of the game, Wenda tore him apart. Let's examine how he might have survived what happened to him. We see a sad Oren who is no longer happy but is still alive. His body is bandaged where his wound was, and he is saved, but his face indicates that he has gone through something horrifying. As we know, the second person to die was Ratty. He committed suicide because of intense inner anguish, which Wenda caused him. Even though this is a happy ending for him, he still looks angry. I believe he is angry at Wenda and may even be planning revenge next time death comes. He insulted him, saying that the world would be better without him and that he was worthless. What can we see in the happy version where he survived? I'm so glad he's alive. He wanted to make the world a better place. He wanted to build new homes for the characters. He wanted to place spaces for everyone to enjoy. However, an accident occurred on the building site. I believe that Wenda was also responsible for his death. She may have pushed him from a height, causing serious head trauma. Now let's see what happens if he is saved. Like the others who survived, his head is bandaged and he is alive, which is fantastic, but he shows no emotion. Perhaps the severe injury has left him permanently depressed. Funbot failed to handle Wenda's abuse of the others and most likely fell into a deep despair in the version where he survived and appears nearly identical to the original version when things were still going well. But I believe he will never be as happy as he was because the atrocities he saw are now permanently carved in his memory. The Veneria. Although she appears calm and healthy in the updated version, her eyes are closed. Perhaps they can be saved, but she needs time to heal without opening them. The sprout that was growing on her head started to root into her skull, obtaining nutrition from her blood and hair. She will therefore be fine in this version of the game, but in another, Veneria lives, but she will never be able to see her again. What are your thoughts on that? Please share them in the comments section. In the horror version of the game, Gray was able to hide at first, but Wenda discovered him and seriously injured his head. In the new version, Gray is still alive and terrified. But even though all the characters in this version survived, he is still cautious of danger. What happened to Brood, we know for sure. Simon, his brother, tried to kill him several times by biting his head and then his body. However, despite the severe injuries we see in the horror version, Brood survived. So what's his story? In the happy ending, we see Brood alive, his body free of bandages, and his wounds look quite different from those of the others. I have a theory that his body heals itself, and his wounds seem to be regenerating. I think he'll fully recover soon that the lips and left eye are now wounded by pressure and glass fragments. But we can tell that he is fine because there is no blood on his neck and his eye is unharmed. However, like the other survivors, he doesn't appear joyful. It's difficult to go through something like that and simply resume your normal life. Wenda tore away CX's face and body in an unbridled act of savagery, causing him to die violently and horribly. However, in the most recent version of the game, he returns looking nearly identical to his former self, with the exception of a minor color shift. His face and eyes seem to have been miraculously restored. But how could he have withstood such a vicious attack and escaped unharmed? I have a theory that Gray might have stepped in just in time to restrain Wenda and stop the fatal attack, saving Ooks from a grisly end. What do you think? What about Sky? Wenda caused him excruciating anguish by driving 4 rods into his body and torturing him without showing him mercy. Despite the constant suffering, the Sky has somehow fully returned, recovered and seemingly in a stable state. Even though he appears unhappy, his head is heavily bandaged, with one side completely covered to conceal any visible wounds. It is a comfort that he is still alive, and we hope that he continues to heal quickly and regains all of his vigor. Next, let's explore Mr. Sun's narrative. In the first version, we witnessed him being pushed into becoming an accomplice by Black, But in the alternate version, where everyone escapes, Mr. Sun appears to be utterly unaffected, as if the Dark Alliance never occurred. We're seeing a world in which Mr. Sun completely refused to be influenced by Black. Next, we have Derpal, who we saw in a previous video suffered a terrible fate and broke both his jaw and neck. In this survival version, he appears to be fully recovered, with his jaw and, most importantly, his neck fully restored. In this case, he didn't become an enemy or contribute to the harm of others, even though he still has a dejected expression. Mr. Tree's face was nailed to a missing post, making him carry the weight of shame all the time over a young girl from Dayton, Ohio, went missing. And in a recent video, we shared a theory about her and even discovered a real-world connection. If you haven't seen that theory yet, watch it on our channel right now to see the alternate happy ending where everyone survives. Her name is McKenna May. Mr. Tree is distinct. He stands calmly, almost grinning, and has bright green leaves. There is no poster attached. Thus it appears the mod creator may be implying something more profound. Perhaps the return of the lost girl is connected to Mr. Tree's happiness? If so, it's a really hopeful conclusion. And I'd love to think that this is the planned resolve. Let's move on to Simon in the dark plot. Although Simon eventually took his own life to sate his hunger, the new, happier version of Simon shows him completely changed, as if the darkness within him has completely disappeared. Simon was so consumed by hunger that he even bit his brother Brood, but fortunately, Brood survived. In the horror version, he somehow survived, but it seemed like he saw everything desperately trying to warn us. But Black ended up silencing him for good in this altered version. Although Mr. Fun Computer is calm, almost subdued, the once energetic and cheerful screen we knew now only displays a neutral image. Now he's a typical character with complete control over his impulses and no intention of harming anyone. It's a remarkable change that shows a side of Simon free from his primal, dangerous urges, a neutral expression with just one note remaining. Do you think he still feels the need to tell what he saw? It seems like he has something he needs to say, even if it's silently. After going insane or being tricked by Black, Wenda became Black's weapon and killed nearly every character. However, now that everyone is alive, Wenda isn't happy at all. I believe this is because she prefers the horror version where she could kill characters. Here, she felt amazing. When Wenda begins to sing, we catch a glimpse of her smile, but it's most likely a mirage. Since this is the happy ending, Wenda is attempting to conceal her actual emotions behind this false grin. But as soon as she finishes singing, we can see her true feelings. Please share your thoughts in the comments section, subscribe to the channel, and like the video. How could the Sprunks have survived? Who saved them?
Hi everyone. Today we're going to share a new theory about Spunky. Please share your best theories in the comments section, and we'll be sure to share them in future episodes. I'll go into detail about what happened to Spun and how their city became so eerie. The user FireFurryOo posted this theory on the Incredibox Sprunki wiki. To begin, let's discuss the fact that the game has dead characters, which may be categorized into 3 groups. This category comprises those who die relatively regular deaths, such as Sky and Tuner, whose injuries are clear-cut and explicable. Wenda killed them because she was the only one who could have caused them to suffer such harm. Pinky, Ratty, Gerald, Kluwer, Orin, and probably Veneria are among the strangers who died in the second category. Since Pinky's wounds mimic the aftermath of his bite, Simon most certainly killed her. Gerald was killed by his costume, although this may have happened by accident, and nobody was at fault. Perhaps during Wenda'S or another person's attack. The third category includes people who become monsters. The Kluwer most likely suffered a head injury after something fell on his plate from above. These characters are hilarious. Now, what about the terrifying Dark World? There is a hypothesis that this is some alternative universe. But what if I told you that it's actually the world where the game starts? Take a time to think about how the Dark World looks. It's nearly completely black, enveloped in mystery and shadows. And who else in the game is most closely associated with the color black? It's Black from Sprung, of course. Could he have been the one to destroy the good, vibrant world? But what could have driven him to such a drastic act? All of the characters in the game form a close-knit community with one another, but Black stands apart from this unity. He has no real ties or connections with anyone else, almost as if he's a forgotten shadow, while the others laugh and support one another. There is also a haunting clue. A missing persons poster on Mr. Tree depicts a girl who shares a striking resemblance to Black in terms of design and style. This connection leads me to believe that this could be Black's lost daughter, or even his wife, who mysteriously disappeared. If this is the case, Black not only had to deal with the pain of losing someone he loved, but was also shunned by everyone else he could have turned to for comfort or support. Thus, it's a double tragedy that would have set him on a dark path of hatred and sadness. And as a kind of retaliation for his pain, he might have chosen to ruin their world. Perhaps because of his association with darkness, Black has a special ability to absorb colors. Driven by his suffering, he started using this ability to gradually drain the colorful world around him of its color, turning it into darkness. However, his vengeance didn't stop there. He also started stealing colors from other characters that caused them to lose their original shapes and transform into hideous, monstrous versions of themselves. Let's name this terrible power. Distortion via it Black gets his retribution by changing the world and its people. Because the sun releases light that is absorbed by plants, the plants in Veneria started to absorb this distorted sunlight, which led to their mutation and spread. This is why Mr. Sun was also impacted by the distortion in his image of sadness and loneliness. Uncontrollably, the plants spread throughout Veneria, changing its form and color to create an unfamiliar and eerie landscape. However, some characters, Wenda and Gray, were colorless by nature and, because of their special characteristics, were immune to the distortions and monstrous transformations that befell others, allowing them to live in this corrupted world without being disturbed. However, this immunity ultimately didn't bring any relief to Cluer, and Wenda in particular was deeply. She couldn't stop the distortion itself, but she believed she could stop the full transformations by killing them before they lost all humanity. However, Tuner wouldn't allow her to carry out this plan, so she began with him. At the time, the world hadn't completely darkened, and there were still a few people who hadn't completely transformed into monsters. She was devastated to see everyone around her change into terrifying monsters. After this incident, Wenda started her tragic mission to find her other friends to end their suffering before the distortion could fully take them. However, seeing her companions turn into monsters and witnessing herself kill them drove her to madness, and the distortion eventually reached Ratty. Wenda approached Tuner, launched a swift attack back, disarmed him, seized his gun, and shot him. This is why Tuner appears simply dead in the game, without any monstrous transformation. He decided to take his own life before the process could finish, after realizing that he was going through the same terrible metamorphosis and remembering what had happened to the others. This stopped his transformation, but since it had already started, the parts of his body that hadn't completely changed became unstable and eventually fell off. So let's take a look at the characters that are still alive, if my memory serves me correctly. Mr. Fun Computer Brood, a fun bot. Since the previous two aren't alive, Wenda Gray and Jeffrey survived. They are merely machines. These are several theories as to why the multicolored brood who survived Simon's bite might have been impacted by distortion. He found characters and drained their energy when he saw the bitten brood, which he might have assumed was already dead or distorted and passed by. Wenda and Gray are characters defined by their lack of color, which made them immune to the distortion. Distortion has less effect on darker colors, which is what Brood has. Consequences of the distortion. The majority of other beings were changed into twisted and monstrous forms by this enigmatic phenomenon. But since Gray and Wenda are colorless, the distortion was unable to affect them as much as it did others, leaving them largely unaffected by the general chaos. Then there is Jevin, who is different from Wenda and Gray. Since it tends to impact people with brilliant, distinctive hues, it makes sense that Jevin, who is colorful and vivid, but having a dark edge, would have been susceptible to the distortion. However, Jevin managed to remain unaltered and in his original shape throughout the distortion. But how could this be? Simply listen to Jevin's voice in both the good and the dark distorted versions, and you'll notice that although it didn't change much, it took on a darker, more eerie quality in the twisted world. It sounds as though he's casting some kind of spell, and if you look closely at him, his appearance even suggests that of a sorcerer, hinting at a profound comprehension of magic and the paranormal. It's fair to assume that after learning about the distortion's destructive effects, he might have used his magical knowledge to forge a barrier that would have protected him from the distortion's corrupting influence, preserving his identity and preventing him from turning into a monster like so many others. His magical abilities and foresight might have prevented him from meeting an otherwise inevitable end, giving him a special immunity. This leads us to regarding the question of Oren's murder. One plausible theory is that Wenda may have attacked him, slitting his chest with a knife in an effort to kill him. However, it's possible that Oren didn't die immediately, but rather lingered on the brink of death, during which time the distortion took hold of him and accelerated his transformation into a monster. In this way, the distortion continued to spread its evil influence, even among those who were close to death. What do you think of this theory? Could Jevin have used magic to fend off the distortion? Was Oren's monstrous change unintentionally brought on by W's attack? To stay up to date on more theories and conversations, please leave your thoughts in the comments section. And of course, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, good luck, and see you soon. The best and most compelling theories will be featured in our next video. Hello, everyone. Do you love Spunky? Today, we're delving into some fascinating new theories that you probably haven't even considered. A big thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts and theories in the comments section of our previous videos, many of which received a lot of love from the community. If you have any ideas or theories about this fandom, don't hesitate to share them in the comments section below. We're here to support your creativity. Let's start with the first theory, which was actually shared with us in the comments. It's pretty intriguing, so let's try to dissect it. The author Flower6FB has put forth the intriguing theory that Tantuner may have shot himself because he was the only one carrying a gun. It's possible that he did this to give Wenda the impression that someone had shot him to stop her from killing or hurting him further. While this is an intriguing theory, some may contend that Wenda killed Tuner. Opinions on this issue are undoubtedly divided. How it seems, while it's true that Tuner had the gun, who's to say that Wenda, in her deranged state, didn't sneak up on him in the middle of the night, steal the weapon, and shoot him? Wenda appears to have gone completely insane and is becoming uncontrollable. It's very likely that she also hurt the other characters, but more on that in the next theory, about how the other characters met their fates. Point blank. All of these are merely conjectures at this time, and I believe the actual truth will come to light as the narrative progresses before we go on to the next hypothesis. To remain up to date on all the newest theories and information, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. The next theory goes into greater detail about the deaths of all the feisty people, what transpired, and how Wenda handled it. If you're as interested as I am, let's dive right in and solve this mystery together. White Wenda tore Orange Oren to pieces. Since he had no adversaries, Wenda was the only one who could have hurt him. She went insane and killed other characters, as you can even see. Blood stains on her lips and a crazy, insane expression in her eyes. Red Ratty killed himself, most likely due to intrusive thoughts, or Wenda's whispers that he was useless and should end everything. It appears that Wenda gradually drove him insane until he could take no more. When a plate hit Silver Kluwer so hard that his skull cracked, he was murdered. Because of his love for building, it's possible that he died in a horrible accident while constructing anything in their city, or that it was most likely a staged funbot. He was terrified, and may have even fallen into melancholy because he didn't know how to deal with the circumstance after witnessing the majority of his pals either die in panic or going into despair. As if her very life force had been consumed from within, Green Veneria faced an especially unsettling fate when the sprout growing on her head started to take root, its tendrils digging into her skull and draining nutrients from her blood and hair. Gray managed to survive by hiding well, seemingly out of sheer fear, keeping him hidden from the chaos around him. Wenda mutilated Lime Oaks' ex by tearing or scratching his face off. It's a graphic picture, but it fits with W's terrible spiral into insanity. Gold Gerold suffered as Wenda squeezed his robotic goggles until his mouth and left eye were crushed by broken glass and pressure. It's a cruel scene that only serves to highlight how sinister her acts are. Sky Blue Sky didn't escape W's wrath either. She further demonstrated her willingness to go to great measures to kill people around her by piercing him with 4 rods. There is a proven injury to her brown BRD. Yellow Simon bit his brother, yet he is still alive and doesn't feel any pain. Curiously, there is confirmed evidence that Simon may have choked after consuming Brown's bucket. A haunting and tragic story, Mr. Sun was probably hurt by Black, which added another level of mystery to the characters. Mr. Tree was possessed by a girl's soul, and his life force was torn out. His face was nailed to a missing poster, making him bear the guilt for the person who was killed forever. Derpal in Purple White Wenda shot Tan Tuner, as we mentioned in the previous theory, adding another layer of suspicion and tragedy to his story. According to the creator, who had skin so elastic that he might have simply stretched his jaw too far, breaking his joints in a bizarre yet strangely fitting way. Yellow Simon was unable to resist an overwhelming hunger that consumed him. He tried to fight it, but the desire became too strong and took over him completely. As for White Wenda, there is speculation that whatever happened to her, she is no longer the person her friends knew. Mr. Fun Computer survived, but he seems to know too much. Perhaps he saw something so horrifying that he wants to warn us about it. She was either brainwashed or manipulated by Black or Blue Jevin, which resulted in an abrupt and uncontrollable thirst for blood. Although Pink Pinky was really nice, she probably discovered that she shouldn't have either Black or White Wenda, since they were likely to endanger her, and as a result, her face was torn off. The author's theory that Tuner was shot by Wenda gives us 2 equally intriguing theories, both of which could be true. However, given Wenda's mental state, it's completely plausible that she could have committed this act, and everyone might think Tuner took it. This is a grim fate for someone so gentle, Blue Jevin, who is confirmed to be a cultist. He survived, but it's unclear if he harmed anyone. He seems to have both good and bad sides, making him a wild card in this twisted universe. Wenda is the real devil of the Spunky world. We can only speculate as to what happened to her, why she started attacking her friends, and what changed her. We also didn't discuss the character of Black, who may be responsible for all of this. It's likely that he drove Wenda insane, which led her to murder a lot of people. His own life was always perceived as grim and unhappy. Perhaps he just grew weary of living in such a broken world. Quantity of characters. This is an intriguing theory because, although Black seems like a normal character in the regular version, he appears to be extremely eerie in the horror version. What if, instead, he was the one who tricked Wenda into committing these crimes against all the characters? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this theory in the comments section. What do you think about Black's possible impact on Wenda? There are a lot of levels to take into account, so it would be interesting to work through this puzzle together. Examine every potential angle. Typical non-canon, wearing a chic top hat and a clean white tie. He is a fully black sprunk with no visible mouth, which adds to his enigmatic image. Despite his dark appearance, he oozes elegance. In this form, horror seems feisty and has been stripped of all obvious ornaments, giving him a more understated appearance. He stands out even more since he appears significantly thinner than the other Sprung. His face is noticeably more deformed and human-like, yet it is covered in darkness, producing an eerie atmosphere that inspires curiosity and terror. Lastly, I would want to express my gratitude to everyone who has watched this movie. Your encouragement and interest in my work greatly inspire me to make more. Through cooperative discussions, in-depth theories, and careful analysis, the gaming community has come together to unravel these mysteries in a way that is incredibly captivating. With each new discovery, we get closer to understanding the mystery's full scope. Now is the ideal moment to jump in and join the discussion if you're passionate about revealing secret details and putting the puzzle pieces together. We encourage you to leave your ideas and hypotheses in the comments below. Once more, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm genuinely excited to hear your imaginative thoughts, and together we can set off on an exciting trip to eventually solve the riddle of Sprung. Your insights may hold the key to comprehending this mysterious figure. Means the world to us. Your assistance enables us to keep producing material and delving into fascinating mysteries. Let's delve deeply into this conversation and ensure that everyone finds it interesting.